This is a meeting to share or to discuss non duality or Advaita. Advaita means not two. So what it doesn't mean is that everything is one. What it means is that it's not two. The reason they say not two instead of one is because what it's pointing to, of course, is not two either. Is that what is, or this, is unspeakable. It's a mystery. It's unknowable. It's undefinable. It's not able to be understood or pointed to because it's not separate. There's no position in it. There's no where to point to this from. The not two that's being talked about is a not two that is already everything. That everything is absolute. And that's this. This is the absolute. There is only the absolute. So, a logical question from that would be, if there isn't two, and there is no position, why say it? Why would anybody take the time to say, there is not two? Because it seems that in the middle, or within this not two, there arises an experience which calls itself I or me. So this experience which arises within the not two calls itself an I, calls itself me. And that experience, as all experience, is an experience of duality. Now the experience of the I is very simply a contracted sense in the body which gives the experience of a here, a position. That position is immediately an experience of the search for meaning. It covers over not two with the search for meaning and makes it appear as something it's not, real, solid. And within that, or with that, is the search for meaning and purpose. So there's an experience that arises within that says, I am real, I have free will and choice, and through my free will and choice, I will find the meaning and purpose which I experience missing. The problem for that experience, and therefore the message of the word not two or Advaita, is there is no real duality. So that experience is completely illusory. And when that experience ends or collapses or stops happening, one thing that's recognized is it never happened. There never was duality, there never was two. So that's basically the ideas behind what is being shared here. And because the message is there's not two, there's nothing missing. There's nothing that needs to be set right. So in this meeting as well, there's no expectation. There's no need for anything to happen or not to happen. There's no demand on the individual for anything to be different or anything to be done.
You said it cannot be pointed to,
Yeah.
that it is, but still people keep pointing.
Yeah.
And isn't it a help in the beginning?
No. I mean, it might seem to be a help, yeah. The thing is what's being helped and what's being looked for are never actually separate. So it's impossible to say that finding nothing is something happening, or that nothing happening is something happening.
What I'm trying to say is, now I'm sitting here and listening to you, and I can.
But you're not. If there's someone sitting there,
Yeah.
they're doing everything they can not to hear what's being said. And no one chose to come here. And if it's heard, no one will hear it. This is absolutely the last thing an individual wants to hear.
Yeah.
And when it dies, it's recognized it was all it was looking for. We're not talking about anything special. We're talking about simply this, what's happening. The individual lives in a psychic reality which has something else, which is in this big, complicated world where there's a real things that are happening and has free will and choice that are going to be able to change its experience to what it's looking for. And when that collapses, all that's left is this, what's happening. And that's all there is what's happening.
Still, it seems to be a road to nothingness.
Only in the dream.
Yeah, but it is the experience of searching. Yes, the separate self is searching and finally sees.
No, it doesn't.
Was it here? It was here.
No, the individual never sees this. The individual dies, the story dies, and what's left, which is all there ever is what is. It's a dream. That there's something else is a dream. And that there's a path, or that seeking serves a purpose, is a dream.
You said there's no path.
Oh, I don't know that I did, but that's true.
Well, whatever. But coming here is also a path.
Nobody came here. In the experience of the individual is that this, what seems to be happening, is dependent upon what happened before. What that does is it's a perspective that I am real, what's happening is real, and is a consequence of what seemed to happen before. When that imaginary world dies, it's obvious that what is not dependent on anything. It's not the consequence of anything. And it has no need to be what it is. It's absolute freedom appearing as this, independent of what was appearing before. What was appearing before is equally real and unreal as what seems to be appearing now. That and this are both this. There is nothing else. The individual lives in a world of something else. It's called hope. There isn't really anything else. There's just this. It's really simple. All that's being pointed to is that this is all there is. And it doesn't need to be what it is, and it doesn't need to be different. The individual lives in that world of consequence and succession and contingency because it lives in a world where it's searching for something. So it needs there to be something else, somewhere else, where it will, through its free will and choice, find what it feels is missing. So it's dependent upon this succession being real. It's dependent upon it. It's not. There is only what is, and it appears, in that case, as real succession. It's not real succession. It's just what is appearing that way.
What would you say the collapse of the individual would be?
What is it?
Yeah.
It's the end of something that never happened. And it sounds a bit paradoxical, but when it happens, That's exactly the way it looks. It's the end of something that never happened.
I know what you mean. On the other hand, it looks like there is an event called the collapse of an individual.
Well, that's not the way it was here. The event that you're talking about was for me an unevent. It was the end of something that never happened. It wasn't actual positivity, something additional. It was a loss. But it was a bit of an odd loss because it was a loss of something that never was. So it wasn't an event.
Calling it an event is like there is a point where something is, let's say, new.
Exactly, and that's exactly what didn't happen. There is only the new. Just when there's this experience of duality, there seems to be something that's old, something known.
Mm-hmm.
When the individual dies, falls away, when the known dies or falls away, it's recognized nothing was ever known. There is only the new. That's not a positivity. That's not something that happens and is added in as new information. It's the loss of something that never happened. It's the loss of the experience of knowing. So it doesn't really happen. The individual would think that this, what is, would change if it found what it was looking for. That there's something in this that it doesn't have or needs to find for it to be what it thinks it should be. That would be a positivity, if it would find that. That's the illusion that it lives in, that there's something missing. There isn't anything missing. There is nothing that's incomplete. There's nothing that needs to be put right. This is already what is. So what's lost is the experience that this isn't it. That's not an addition, because this is only what's looked for. That's not an addition, it's not something given to it. It's a loss of the experience of this isn't it.
You know, I'm saying loss, but loss is something that was and now it isn't.
Well, I'm also saying something that never was.
Yeah.
So it's a non-experience. I mean, the point is we're trying to explain something that can't be explained. We're trying to communicate about something that can't be talked about. So, I'm doing my best. It's a non-experience. It's a non-happening. And when it happens, it's recognized that it's actually not worth talking about.
But we still keep on talking about
because
doing stuff.
Because there's an individual that thinks that when it happens, it'll mean something. It'll be special.
What's weird, in my case, it's like you see it at some point.
Yeah.
In this way you're talking about, but you're still going back.
But it's not over yet. Seeing that there isn't anybody isn't the end of there being somebody.
Mm-hmm.
What happens sometimes is that the individual collapses or is recognized as never having been, and somebody seems to know that. Somebody thinks that that's important. There's something or something left that thinks that that has some sort of meaning. That's a story. That's still real time instead of apparent time. The end of the story is the end of knowing, the end of experience. And the end of the individual isn't necessarily the end of knowing and the end of experience.
So you mean the end of knowing means the end of individual, no? Because it needs the individual to know something.
Well, the end of knowing, is the end of it.
End of the individual, the
The
collapse
end
of
of
the
knowing.
individual. But how about consciousness? Isn't there
There's no such thing as consciousness.
It's not.
Consciousness is a dream.
In a dream?
Just being pedantic, because if you want to say consciousness, you're going to have to talk about that's an object. What we're talking about is the end of subject-object, or the end of the experience of a subject which never was. So there's no subject-object. So there can't be any objective consciousness, awareness. That can't be, unless there's someone to know it. It sounds so fantastic, but it's really quite simple. All we're talking about is this, without anybody in it that knows that. That's it. And not another this, not somewhere else. Exactly this, but without anybody in it that knows it.
So my question is just a question. There's no meaning, nothing at all. But there's an individual behind who wants to know.
Yeah.
But the act of questioning is, there's no root to it. No.
Well, the individual, there's no root to it either.
Yes, but still the act, the acting of the questioning, there's, what is it?
It's the same as the individual, it's the same as everything else. It's nothing or no thing. It's unknowing. It's the mystery appearing as an individual or a question. That's the problem for the individual. It thinks that there's something really separate from the mystery, and it wants to find the mystery. What it can't know, but what is still the reality, it is the mystery. That questions the mystery. There is only the mystery. There is only unknowing. That's why it can't be found. It's not anywhere else.
So you can't say, you are what is. Is that wrong?
There is only what is. There's no you in it. There is only what is.
Yes, there is only what is.
Whatever appears is what is. And for the individual, that's a finger on a hand that's being moved by Jim. In reality, that's just simply everything. Nothing appearing as everything.
Yes, it was the only chance I had with people talking about non duality,
Yeah.
that I said, you are what is. But I see what you say.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's interesting for me. For me.
Yeah, what is? What?
Yes, this in context with consciousness that you are, maybe you could say you are consciousness, you are realizing yourself as consciousness.
No, not really.
It's not right. We discussed about.
Well, it's just because what you're doing is you're putting it into a context.
Yes, yes.
Into something that could be understood. And what's being pointed to here is this, to not another this, but what is completely not unknowable. It can't be understood.
Yes.
It can't be told, it can't be explained.
Yes. But it's always this discussion. But it happens through me or something like this. People are always saying,
No.
but it happens.
But that's not true.
It's not true.
It doesn't happen through anyone.
Yes. Yes, of course, I can see it, yes.
There isn't anyone.
Yeah.
There isn't even a real position. There's no real here.
Yes, I can see it clear at the moment. That's the topic. This ego, this contraction, this energetic, whatever. Yes. But that's really war. If you are discussing, and I've met people, spirituality people, and so you can imagine they did all this family constipation, he said, yes, and so on. And they, it was really war, because they said it's so utterly arrogant to speak about non-duality in this way, that there is no one here and nothing is happening, and that's, it was really war. Yes. There's no solution if you are meeting or discussing in time.
Well, it doesn't make sense in time.
No, it doesn't.
Or it actually tries to, and it doesn't.
Yes.
Because what is doesn't make sense.
Yes. So you could say if you are in contact with friends or something like, it's utterly futile to speak or to try to speak or
This absolutely never speaks about it.
Yes.
If there's not a question, there's nothing
Yes.
here that has anybody tell anyone anything. Because
Yes,
in reality,
yes.
this doesn't actually see any individuals.
Yes, forget it, because
there aren't
if
any
it happens,
individuals.
it happens, and if
No,
not,
no, there's not, it's not that if it happens, it happens. It's that there's no who would you tell and what would you say? What's out of place? Unless there's somebody that says, no, it's like this, then it's like, no, well, not really. But if nobody says, yeah, I'm here, who are you talking to?
yes, so let's forget all that.
I have one question. Why do you use the term Advaita? Advaita is a philosophy 5,000 years old, and there's quite a solid, let's say, concept with it. So using that term, it might be.
But when you say, I don't know whether I should argue with you or not, because a little bit I'll have to say, in the Vedas it's actually called Advaita-Vedanta. And I don't say Advaita-Vedanta because first off I find that a misunderstanding if you call it the knowing of unknowing or the knowing of not to. That doesn't make any sense to me. But Advaita I find is a very, it's just an old term for calling it not to, and people seem to have some sort of relationship with it, so that's why I use it.
But it's heavy, no? The term is heavy, no?
Yeah.
It sounds great.
No, but there's a concept behind it.
Behind Advaita-Vedanta. Advaita itself, is that ever used just as Advaita?
What is it, Advaita without it?
Not to.
Yeah, it's a Sanskrit word.
Advaita-Vedanta is the...
Well, it's a Sanskrit word, no? Advaita.
Yeah,
It's not two, that's it,
Yeah, exactly.
But it implies a philosophy which is 5,000 years old.
But when you, just to be clear, when you're talking about the philosophy, that's Advaita-Vedanta, isn't it?
It's a little bit mixed because he used this term Advaita for Advaita-Vedanta.
Who did?
Well, in India it's used Advaita for saying Advaita-Vedanta because Vedanta
okay.
is a section of the Upanishad.
I know, yeah. I thought by just saying Advaita, I was sort of coupling myself.
Yeah, but you're using a term by crashing everything, but then you use a term which is heavy, with concept,
Yeah.
loaded with concept.
Yeah, like God.
Yeah, something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what you are saying doesn't fit to anything. No?
Well, yes and no. For me, most or a lot of religions actually are trying to say exactly the same thing. I know that in Buddhism, in Christianity, in Dzogchen, in Advaita-Vedanta, you can find a lot of the things that are being shared here and there.
But they all have a path, no?
Well, see, I don't know what happens there. For me, what happens is you've got somebody that might be like this, who says, all there is purity. And then there's somebody out there in the audience that says, oh, he said everything is purity. Well, I don't feel pure, so I have to become pure. And he has some experiences of purity and thinks, oh, well, I ate white rice before I had that experience of purity, so white rice must have something to do with purity. And completely covering over the reality that what's being shared is there is only purity. So there are these kernels of, I think, of what's being shared here and there, and it gets covered over time with paths and hope and people that think they know what he's trying to say and they'll explain it to you for you. What's being said is so illogical and irrational that even if you wrote it down, it would be misunderstood. It's so easy to misunderstand because it doesn't fit into the logic of the individual, that there's an individual that needs to find something, and it can find that through its own experience of free will and choice. The end of the individual and the recognition or revelation that what is everything, and without need, and without cause, and without anything missing, is a surprise. It's a complete surprise. It's always a surprise. Here it's always a surprise. It never turns anything that was before. It never turns anything into anything that was known. So that's not very easy, I think, to put into words and get that across. That's why these meetings happen. Because it's not like that anything new is being said here. But there's ideas or concepts that build up around it, and then there comes a question, and then, they're sort of undermined.
Where do you see the connection to Christianity?
In the Gospel of St. Thomas, I think he says, I will make an arm, and a leg, a leg.
Please, I didn't understand.
There's a gospel, one of the Gnostic Gospels or something, I think one of the hidden Gospels, called the Gospel of St. Thomas. And in there he says, I will make an arm, and a leg. Which for me means everything is just what it is. There's nothing between it. Nothing needs to be different. Everything is just simply what it is. Or the cornerstone that's always rejected. I would say that this sharing, what's being said here, is the cornerstone which is always rejected. Because it has to be. This has to be rejected. I am the way, the life, and the truth. Here, what I hear is that this is, or what is, the way, the life, and the truth. There is only what is. There's nowhere else.
And it also continues, and you shall find it only through that path. I am the way, the life, and so on. And you shall find it only through me.
Yeah.
Me finding the way, the truth. So for me it seems in this there is no two, there is two searching. There is the individual searching for the truth, for what's real. So there is still a dialogue between nothing and nothing in a way.
Well, nothing and nothing would never
for the
be
mind,
in
this is
fact.
very difficult to. For my mind, for the concept, it's quite difficult to understand this. Okay, this is it.
No, but I don't understand it.
Oh.
This isn't about understanding this. This is about the end of the need to understand this. All that's being suggested here is that there's a contracted sense of energy which covers over what is through the search of meaning.
Yes.
That experience does not actually have any effect on what is. And the collapse of it happens for no reason, and what's left is what is. Which is all there is. That's not complicated. Is it?
Yes, no, it's
No.
not. No.
There's no denial of anything.
No.
What's being suggested here is that time and everything that appears, like coming here and all the rest of it, is real and unreal. It's empty.
Yes, it's really.
It has no real contingency. Nothing depends upon any of it. It's only the arising of the contracted sense of energy which says, I am real, which is then dependent upon all of that. That's the only unreal thing in this whole story, in the whole appearance, is the experience of being an individual. Everything else is just simply what it is.
Yes, and so that's the solution for me, the real and unreal. Everything is real and unreal.
Yeah.
Would you say that the practice of being aware of the moment and not thinking and doing interpretation and imagination all the time, that constant spiral of thinking about things and not being in the moment, and practicing to be in that moment and just perceive it, that it helps.
Well, the individual, I think, is tortured by thoughts and feelings. And because the individual can't imagine a world without it, the best it can imagine is to detach from thoughts and feelings, which are its connection, it thinks, to the whole world. So if it can detach from that, it feels better. So by being in this imaginary now, by concentrating on the senses of the body and detaching from what is going on, in that sense, it could find some relief. But what it doesn't know, what it can't imagine, is that its attachment to all of that and everything else that happens is the result of it being unreal, is the result of it being a figment that arises, and therefore, in defending what it thinks it knows, called here, it has to use an imaginary free will and choice, which is incredibly ineffective, and try to control everything that's happening out there. What happens when the individual dies, feelings are then feelings, and thoughts are then thoughts, and nobody cares.
So we think and feel because it gives us a sense of being real.
The individual, you could think of it as an action. The action of the individual is this. It does this to thoughts and feelings. With its little sieve, it was trying to filter out everything that's important and put it into boxes and things that it calls
Feel a self.
Well, confirm itself. Actually, its whole energy, its whole action is finding a solution to itself. It wants to solve the problem of itself. That's what it's trying to do.
I find that through meditation, I've been doing meditation now for 3 years, a lot of things resolved for me, and I feel some nothingness, but this is not the nothingness that we're talking about here. But that there was so much illusion in my life, and I'm much lighter now, and I think that this, I don't know how, non-duality or spiritual enlightenment is this, are the same things?
Not really.
Not really, but
not at all, actually.
That they lead to ultimate or absolute nothingness or lightness.
Right. For me, absolute nothingness or absolute lightness are projections of the individual. That feels like something special needs to happen for it to be okay. Because it experiences itself as special, it actually experiences itself as the most important person in the world and the center of the universe. So it imagines that there's something really special, like a Buddha or a God, is going to happen to it to solve the problem of itself. Really, it's exceptionally simple. It's really just this. It doesn't need to be special. It's the ordinariness of what is what it's really looking for, but it has no idea that that's what it's looking for. None whatsoever. It's not actually looking for that. It's looking to confirm and maintain itself. But the solution to itself is. And it never finds it. It's the end of it. But there's no suggestion here that there shouldn't be meditation. What is suggested is that doesn't actually touch what we're talking about here. The experience of separation.
And what touches this?
Nothing. Because there's nothing separate from it.
The experience of what's going on here, it's not just nothing.
The experience of what's going on here is the problem. What's being suggested here isn't that the experience of what's going on here is the solution to the problem of I. What's being said here is the solution to the problem of I is the end of experience. The individual lives in a world where it's inside the body. It's inside, the I lives inside the body. And everything else is outside. And it's that interaction between those two, which it calls its life. Mm-hmm. That's an illusion. There is no real inside, and there is no real outside. So when the individual dies, that inside the body dies, and that outside the body falls away. And there is only what is, and that is not an experience.
And that's not an experience.
No.
It's just nothing.
It's actually everything.
So between nothing and everything,
No.
there is
And that's what
nothing.
the individual is stuck in a position. And its position is everything and nothing, nothing and everything, being and consciousness, I know consciousness. There's always two. What it can't get and will never get, but the way it is that this is no thing, everythinging, or everythinging, no thinging, or empty isness. This is that. This is those two. This is non-dual. There's no position here to know anything about what's being said. There is just simply everything.
Could one use the term being instead of everything?
You can call it God. You can call it consciousness. You can call it anything, actually. You can call it dog shit. Just as long as all there is dog shit, then we're talking about the same thing. But if you got dog shit and not dog shit, then we're lost. But as long as it's everything, because in a way, as long as it's everything, it doesn't mean anything. So absolute doesn't mean anything. Infinite doesn't mean anything.
So being would be close to it, no?
As long as there's only being,
yes.
then we're talking about the same thing. It doesn't matter what the word is.
Because no being doesn't exist.
Nothing exists, nothing doesn't exist. There is only what is. The point is that what is absolute. And if you want to call it absolute, you want to call it wine, you want to call it flowers, you want to call it shit, you want to call it anything. Put anything in there you want. It's not that, but it's everything. It's absolute. So it's not really a word.
And there's no relative.
Right. Apparently there's a relative. Just like apparently there's time, or else these words wouldn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the absolute timing.
Some people say the relative is inside the absolute, or contained in the absolute. That's not true, is it?
Sounds okay to me. I wouldn't have said that.
Mm.
But that's what I said at the beginning, actually, that within the non-dual, there's an apparent arising of the individual, which is the same thing as the relative appears in the absolute.
It is said that when the me is collapsing, the absolute is recognizing the absolute, which is not an experience. Is it this what you...
I wouldn't have said that.
No.
It seems to me that this illusory experience is what reveals the absolute. Because there's nothing that can actually recognize the absolute. Because it's all there is. There's no distance to it. So it's this apparent happening which reveals what everything is. And it is not.
view possible, or the contradiction to pursue this ego death?
Well, I don't know what you mean by ego death, but if you're talking about what's being shared here,
or the collapse of
the individual,
the contradiction to pursue that, sorry, and to have a strong purpose in life, to fight for something.
Well, both of those suggest that there's free will and choice, and there isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't there not a difference between that you can say, I can do what I will, but I can't will what I will?
No, there's no difference because there's no one that could do either one of those.
Mm-hmm. It's very strict and radical. You are so utterly radical. I don't know.
The point is,
I don't believe you.
this isn't. No, don't believe me. Definitely don't believe me. If you had a choice,
No, I
don't
don't.
believe me. It's not personal. This message doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up.
No,
Who
sometimes.
could make this up? No, but it's just the way it is.
Yes.
There isn't.
I
See,
know.
that question comes from the experience that there's something else.
Yeah.
There's actually real time in which there's a real person that could make a real decision about something that's really going to happen. None of that's true. There is no real time. There isn't anything else. There's nothing going to happen. This is nothing happening.
Yes, maybe that you can do what you want.
Who's going to do that?
Yes, that's how can I say, a holiday in the me.
Who's going to?
For the me. Why not?
Well, there's no individual that has that choice.
Yes.
It's harder with family
To what?
to deal with.
No. What can happen is when this is being heard, that whole contraction can unravel a bit. And this contraction in relationships has a lot to do with games.
Yeah.
And so when those games start to fall away, it can be difficult because the games aren't the same. But nobody's doing that.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. With family. Yeah. So why is it?
Well, it isn't, so that's the end of that. There is no real position. There is no real here, and nothing is known.
Nothing. When you say this is what I cannot really grasp. When you say
No, me either.
this cannot be known.
Yeah.
And what I understand is it cannot be known as a concept, but when I touch, I know the touch.
But that's exactly the problem of the individual. The individual knows what this feels like. It knows this is happening.
Yeah.
That's duality. That's the trap. That's the illusion. Because really, when it knows this in the context of the room and the meeting and coming here and what I have to do tonight and what I have to do tomorrow and these are my hands. The reality is, this is just everything. What's being said here isn't coming from authority. There's no one sitting up here who knows something that's trying to tell somebody something. If it's being heard, then all that is friendship. It's not an authority. There's no master.
Master G. You better watch you like your feet.
The individual knows it doesn't know, and so it wants somebody who does. And so that's the reason it's desperate for somebody to tell it what to do.
That's actually my question. Now, what to do?
Well, there's no one to do it.
Yes. But still, there is unhappiness sometimes, there's this.
So why not? That's equally the mystery.
Yeah.
Unhappiness is just the mystery appearing as unhappiness. This doesn't have any solidity to it.
Right?
This doesn't have any solidity to it. Solidity.
Solid.
It's not solid.
Yeah.
So happiness, unhappiness, is just something that appears and flows through this.
Mm.
The experience of the individual is solid.
Mm.
So the experience of unhappiness is then solid.
Mm.
It doesn't pass through, it means something. And because it's happening to someone, someone needs to do something about it. And it needs to do something about happiness and unhappiness. Happiness it wants to hold on to, and unhappiness it wants to get rid of. It has to be an action of everything. This isn't solid though. So even the experience of solidity and the experience of relationship is just an appearance of the mystery. It's not real.
So the emotion is not real, it's not solid, and this one is also not solid. So
There's nothing solid. It's all just an appearance. And it's through that psychic experience of solidity that something else is then created. That experience that there's somewhere else and something else that could be found which will make this feel better.
So does that mean the senses, like seeing, hearing, tasting, feeling, are they heightened?
Through the individual? No, they're deadened.
They're deadened, and then when the individual is gone?
Well, all you can really say is they're no longer deadened, because who's going to know they're heightened?
Okay.
There's no one left comparing. But there is that instant of recognizing that nothing was ever seen before as it was.
There are no steps.
That what is everything. The illusion is that there's something separate. If there's nothing separate, where would one move to? What steps would one take to find what's not separate?
In my imagination, there can be more and more transparency.
It's in your experience, actually.
Yeah.
In your experience, there can be more and more transparency.
Yeah.
That's the dream. That more and more transparency does not lead to the end of the dream.
Yeah. So there's a feeling of being an individual here,
Yeah? Apparently.
but I can't help myself.
No, absolutely not.
So now what?
Exactly. That is the reality for the individual. Now what?
So I can't stop suffering.
There isn't any real you.
It feels like.
I know, that's the dream. It's a complete illusion. And in that psychic world, it has apparent movement from not so good, meditating a couple of years, things feeling better, apparent transparency, hope. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now?
Well, that's a dream. All of that that's being described is what is, appearing as that, is the mystery, appearing as that, is unknowing, appearing as that. It's like a drop in the ocean, suddenly experiencing itself as something other than the ocean. What happens when the drop no longer experiences itself as separate from the ocean, but is again part of the ocean? What changed? What changes? What happens? An illusory experience that a drop in the center of the ocean could be separate from the ocean. That's what changes. Was that real? Was it ever really a separate drop in the ocean? And so, if that separate drop goes through stages where it feels less separate from the ocean, does that really make it less separate from the ocean? Did that change anything?
That's good.
The individual has no idea what I'm talking about. It can't imagine that this is what it's looking for, because it already knows what this is and has checked it off as not it. The individual is very, very simple. Unbelievably simple, actually. It's a contraction in the body, which immediately at the same time is then the search for meaning and purpose and everything. And it's doing it constantly. Jim put his hand there, that meant something. Jim didn't answer that, that meant something. That cup is there, he's drinking water, no, that meant something. I'll look at the way my foot's moving, oh, that means something. Ah, everything's beautiful, oh, I'm getting close. Everything is put into a box. And it needs a box because the individual is on a journey to finding out what the problem is, to solving its issue. And becoming more transparent seems to be better than being less transparent. It's a dream. The whole thing is like a drop in the ocean, thinking it's becoming more of the ocean. And then the dream of separation dies, and nobody wakes up because there never was anything separate. The drop was never separate. And the whole story that it had disappears because there was never real any separation for it to happen. And what's revealed is that this, exactly as it is a mystery. There's absolutely nothing that can be known about it. So it's actually no thing appearing to be this, or nothing happening. It's emptiness appearing as this.
I just had a question in my mind. I didn't know how to formulate it, but now it's again the personality wanting to know something. The question was what perceives this, but this is something that a personality wants to know, what perceives what is.
The individual perceives what is.
Yes.
That's the only thing that perceives.
And in a way it's illusion. What is
perception
perceived?
is
Perception.
an appearance.
Like this is amazing. On the other hand, I think this is a big joke. We walk around suffering and thinking we have to do something and everything. So it's like a contradiction. On one hand, it's just amazing wonder how it all works. If it, looking like it's something where it's nothing. And on the other hand, people are miserable and fighting and doing all kinds of stuff. The joke.
Cosmic joke.
It's a cosmic joke.
It's a cosmic joke, yeah.
So who's laughing?
Yeah, there's a joke that goes along with that. What does he say?
God is the only comedian with an audience that
Never laughs. That's it.
The audience that never laughs.
Yeah. Not trying to tell you anything, but it's not really nothing being something. It's nothing. It's the same thing. There's not like nothing somewhere else where all this comes from and takes form and becomes something. There's not really something else. There's just this. This is nothing. At the moment, for me, the best way to describe it is just to say it's a mystery.
Yeah.
There's just a mystery. There's just mystery.
Mm.